Today, I will tell you a story that began in a ballroom shimmering with chandeliers, laughter, and the clinking of crystal glasses. During the wedding toast, I smiled quietly, holding my glass. No one knew that my late husband's 40 years of work had grown into a legacy worth $120 million, a chain of beachfront villas standing proud along the Carolina coast. And while the music swelled and the guests cheered, I remained silent. Days later, the bride herself would stand in my kitchen and ask me to sign it away. She didn't expect my answer. If stories like this resonate with you, if you believe quiet strength can outlast storms, remember to like and subscribe. Here in Grandma Life Stories, we share tales that remind us dignity is worth protecting, and silence can be sharper than any shout. The wedding of my grandson Michael was a spectacle that could have graced the pages of a glossy magazine. The ballroom in Savannah glowed beneath crystal chandeliers. Polished wood floors gleamed as though burnished by decades of careful hands. Round tables were draped in ivory linens, adorned with towering arrangements of lilies and orchids. A string quartet tucked in the corner sent soft notes drifting across the room, weaving through the laughter and chatter of well-dressed guests. I arrived early, corsage pinned neatly to my dress, and handed my invitation to a smiling usher. He led me past tables filled with family and friends, each one bustling with conversation, and then stopped at a corner near the emergency exit. "Here you are, ma'am," he said, pulling out a chair. It was table 14, a table for afterthoughts. From this seat, a massive column of white orchids blocked my view of the dais where Michael and his bride would be seated. The photographer's lens would not find me here. My face would not be framed in family portraits or captured in the glossy album that the couple would display for years to come. It was not an accident. Families do not make accidents like that. I lowered myself into the chair, smoothing the folds of my dress, and folded my hands in my lap. From my shadowed place, I watched the rest of the family arrange themselves closer to the center, radiant under the lights. I caught glimpses of my daughter-in-law adjusting her jewelry, of distant cousins laughing as they sipped champagne. Everyone was visible. Everyone but me. I told myself it didn't matter. But in truth, something fractured deep inside. When the doors opened and Michael appeared with his bride, Vanessa, the room erupted in applause. She was luminous in a gown that shimmered with each step, her hair sculpted into perfection, her smile wide and confident. My grandson, tall and handsome in his tailored tuxedo, looked at her as though she had hung the moon. I clapped with the others, my smile measured, though my chest tightened. My hands remembered holding Michael's when he was a child, teaching him how to write his name, steadying him as he took his first steps. And yet now, at his grandest moment, I had been placed where no one would notice if I smiled or wept. I lifted my glass when the first toast was given. My voice did not rise above the crowd, but I whispered a silent blessing for him. Only I knew that beneath the veneer of lace and music, I carried a secret heavier than gold. Douglas, my late husband, had spent 40 years building villas along the Carolina coast, strong homes, tested against wind and salt, crafted with sweat and precision. They were not just properties, they were the bones of his life's work. Before he died, he had transferred them all into a trust with my name at its center. He had held my hand in those final days, his voice a rasp, but his grip firm. "Sheila," he said, "don't sign anything. Don't tell anyone. One day you'll understand why." I didn't understand then, but as I sat in that ballroom, orchids hiding me from view, I began to. The evening flowed with polished grace. Plates of fine food appeared, laughter swelled, glasses clinked. I remained silent, offering smiles when eyes turned briefly my way, though few did. And then Vanessa rose for her toast. Her gown caught the light, her posture flawless, her smile the kind that photographs capture as perfection. She held her glass aloft, her voice sweet enough to charm every ear in the room. "Families like ours," she said, pausing for effect, "are meant to enjoy the finer things. And soon, I believe, we'll know how to truly live with the greatness waiting for us." Guests chuckled politely. Some clapped, others nodded, thinking her words no more than the enthusiasm of a new bride. But I heard them differently. Her gaze lingered just long enough, her tone dipped just slightly. The words weren't about joy or gratitude or love. They carried another meaning, veiled but sharp. My hand tightened around the stem of my glass. The wine trembled. I raised the glass anyway, placed it to my lips, and drank in silence. No one around me knew the truth. No one knew about the $120 million legacy my husband had entrusted to me. The villas rooted in the sand, weathered by storms, polished by years of repair. No one knew that in my pocket, beneath the folds of my dress, a brass key lay warm against my hand. The key to the safe where deeds and trust papers waited, locked away. I sat in my corner, unseen, unheard, but not unknowing. Vanessa's words swept over the crowd like a gentle wave. To them, harmless. To me, a warning. I smiled quietly, the smile of a woman who understood far more than the room believed. And in that silence, I promised Douglas once again, I would not sign. Not for them, not for anyone. The applause rose, the music swelled, and the ballroom spun on, unaware that beneath the glittering chandeliers, the first stone of a storm had been cast. The ballroom glittered, but beneath the shine I felt the shift. Laughter rang, silver trays passed from table to table, and the photographer circled like a hawk. Yet in the middle of this carefully staged perfection, I caught it, the first slip of truth. Vanessa leaned close to Michael, her hand brushing the lapel of his tuxedo like a rehearsed gesture. Her lips curved in a smile wide enough to charm a crowd, but her eyes slid past the orchids and locked briefly on me. That smile sharpened, thin, dismissive. Then I heard it, a whisper meant to vanish under the swell of music, but clear enough to cut through. Once she signs, everything gets easier. My hand tightened around the stem of my glass until I thought it might snap. No one else heard, or if they did, they ignored it. Guests clapped for the best man's toast, waiters cleared plates, and Michael only nodded, his jaw stiff. Vanessa's fingers stayed on his sleeve like a hook. I did not rise. I did not move. I kept my smile, shallow and deliberate, while the words replayed like a drumbeat. Once she signs... The night wore on with choreographed elegance. Dancers filled the floor, photographers staged kisses, and Vanessa moved through the crowd like a queen holding court. I remained in my corner, the invisible matriarch, pretending at grace while every instinct screamed caution. At one point, Michael broke from his circle of groomsmen and walked past me. For a fleeting second, our eyes met. His mouth opened as if to speak, but Vanessa's voice called from across the room. He turned instantly, caught in her orbit, leaving me with the silence I knew too well. I stayed until the last toast ended, until the final photograph was staged, until the crowd spilled onto the marble steps outside. My car waited at the curb. No one walked me out. No one noticed when I slipped into the night. The ride home through Savannah's cobblestone streets was quiet. Street lamps glowed against oak branches draped in Spanish moss. The city looked timeless, but my chest carried a storm. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I already knew sleep would not come. I left my shoes by the door, walked through the familiar rooms, and stopped at the hallway safe. Its steel face caught the dim light, scarred from years of moving between Douglas's job sites. I pressed my palm against it, felt the cold metal beneath my skin, and then reached into my cardigan pocket. The brass key was there, warm, heavy. I closed my hand around it and whispered his words, as if repeating them could summon his strength. Don't sign anything. Don't tell anyone. One day you'll understand. I sank into the chair by the kitchen table. The kettle hissed on the stove. I poured water over tea leaves and watched steam curl into the empty space across from me. For 42 years, Douglas had sat there, sleeves rolled, eyes tired from work, yet steady with conviction. Now the chair was vacant, and his warning was all I had left. I lifted the teacup, but my hand shook. Not from weakness, but from clarity. Tonight, Vanessa had shown her hand. The seat they gave me, the smile she wore, The whisper slipped like poison. This was no accident. I was not family to her. I was a gate. Michael's face lingered in my mind. The boy I once rocked to sleep, the young man I had watched stumble and stand again, now tethered to a woman whose ambition burned hotter than loyalty. He looked trapped already, torn between blood and vows. And yet, he had nodded at her words. I set the cup down and let it ring softly against the saucer. That small sound filled the kitchen like a verdict. They thought I was fragile. They thought I was blind. They thought age made me pliable. They were wrong. Outside, the wind rattled the rose trellis Douglas had built with cedar beams. The blooms swayed, but did not break. I stared at them through the window and felt my spine straighten. The truth was plain. I was being targeted. Not tomorrow, not in some distant future. Tonight had drawn the line. They would come, and they would come soon. And when they did, I would be ready. I rose, walked back to the safe, and slid the key into the lock. The mechanism clicked with a sound both final and reassuring. Inside lay the deeds, trust papers, and every scrap of proof that the villas were mine alone. I touched them only briefly before closing the door again. Paper was fragile. Resolve was not. I returned to the table, set the key down beside my cup, and folded my hands. My pulse slowed, my breath steadied. I thought of Vanessa's smile, Michael's silence, Douglas's grip on my hand the night before he passed. The pattern was clear now, woven together like the beams of the villas themselves. They would try to pry open the fortress he built. They would use charm, pressure, maybe even deception. But I carried more than documents. I carried his legacy, his warning, his faith that I could hold the line when he no longer could. The clock struck midnight. I whispered into the still air, "You told me not to sign. Tonight I finally understand why." The words settled in the room, firm as stone. I reached for the key, slipped it back into my pocket, and let its weight press against my side. It was not just metal, it was armor. Tomorrow, I knew, would not bring peace. Tomorrow would bring the first knock on my door. But tonight, in the quiet of my own house, I was ready. It had been 3 weeks since Michael's wedding. 3 weeks since the orchids had hidden me in the corner of that ballroom. I had waited, watching the days pass like clouds, certain the silence wouldn't last. It didn't. On a Tuesday morning, while the kettle hissed on the stove and the roses outside bent under a slow breeze, there came a knock on the door. Not the gentle knock of a neighbor. This was sharper, practiced. I opened it to find Vanessa standing there in a fitted dress, her smile painted on too tight. Beside her stood a man I'd never seen before, a lawyer's briefcase in hand. His suit pressed so crisp it looked like it might cut glass. "This is Travis," Vanessa said brightly. "He's just here to help with a little paperwork." Travis offered a handshake I didn't take. His eyes swept the hallway like he was already measuring the house for a sale. "May we come in?" Vanessa's tone left no room for refusal. I stepped aside, silent. They walked straight to the kitchen as though they'd been invited a dozen times. Vanessa took the chair across from mine, crossing her legs neatly, her smile growing sweeter by the second. Travis sat beside her, sliding a thick folder from his briefcase. He placed it squarely in the center of the table. Bold black letters glared up at me, "Durable Power of Attorney." Vanessa leaned forward, her voice dripping with practiced concern. "Grandma, this is only to protect you. You're living alone now, and we just want to make sure you're safe. Bills, properties, accounts, this makes everything easier for you. We'll handle the heavy lifting." Travis tapped the folder with 2 fingers. "Standard language. Nothing to worry about. It ensures they can manage affairs on your behalf in case of illness or, well, confusion." The word lingered like poison. Confusion. I reached for the teapot instead. The steam curled upward as I poured slowly into porcelain cups, the sound of water filling the silence they had left dangling in the air. I placed 1 cup in front of Vanessa, 1 in front of Travis, and 1 before myself. Neither touched theirs. Vanessa's voice grew softer, honeyed. "It's just a signature, Grandma. Think of it as peace of mind. For you. For all of us." Her hand rested lightly on the folder, manicured nails glinting in the morning light. I set the teapot down, lifted my spoon, and stirred my cup slowly. The ring of silver against porcelain was deliberate. Vanessa tried again, leaning closer. "We're family. You trust Michael, don't you? You trust me. Why make this harder than it needs to be?" I finally looked up. My smile was faint, polite, but my eyes met hers with the weight of 40 years spent standing beside a man who built fortresses out of timber and stone. My gaze was steady, cold. Travis cleared his throat. "Mrs. Hart, I assure you, this is only for your benefit. Durable power of attorney is common practice. It prevents delays. It avoids confusion in emergencies. All you need to do is sign here and here." He flipped open the folder, sliding a pen toward me. The papers spread across the wood like a trap already sprung. Paragraphs of small print, clauses that gave them immediate authority, sweeping rights dressed up as protection. I let the silence stretch. I lifted my cup, sipped slowly, then set it down with care. Vanessa's smile twitched, just enough to reveal the edge beneath the sugar. "We're trying to help you. You don't want to make things difficult, do you?" I stirred again, the spoon striking the cup in an even rhythm. My silence pressed harder than any words could. Travis leaned back, frustrated but cloaking it in professionalism. "Of course, you'll want to review this carefully. We can leave it with you, but the sooner it's signed, the sooner you'll have peace of mind." He closed the folder, slid it back across the table, and snapped his briefcase open. The sound echoed like a gavel strike. Vanessa stood, smoothing her skirt, her eyes flicking over the safe in the hallway as though she knew exactly what it held. She looked back at me, that same smile glued to her face. "Think about it, Grandma. Don't wait too long. Opportunities can slip away." I smiled again, faint but firm. My hand rested lightly on the spoon, tapping once against porcelain. The sound rang through the kitchen, clear and sharp, like the toll of a bell. A warning. A line drawn. They heard it, even if they pretended they didn't. The visit came 2 evenings later. I had just finished watering the roses when I heard a car pull into the drive. Tires crunched on gravel, and when I looked through the lace curtain, I saw Michael step out. No lawyer this time, no entourage, just him, hands shoved deep in his pockets, shoulders heavy with something heavier than the Savannah heat. I opened the door before he could knock. His eyes flicked up, meeting mine for a heartbeat before darting away. "Grandma," he said, voice low but urgent, "can we talk?" I nodded once and stepped aside. He entered the kitchen, the same kitchen where 3 days ago Vanessa and her lawyer had laid down their trap. The folder was gone, but the memory of it still clung to the wood grain of the table. Michael sat without waiting, elbows on his knees, fingers raking through his hair. He looked younger than he had at the wedding, like the boy I remembered pulling skinned knees out of summer dust. But his words weren't those of a boy. "I need money," he said flatly. "I need it to start something real, a business. I've been waiting too long to prove myself, and this is my chance." I poured tea without answering, letting the hiss of the kettle fill the silence he had left hanging. He pushed forward, words tumbling faster. "Vanessa and we've talked about it. We know the properties Dad built with Grandpa are valuable, and it makes sense for the family to use them, for me to use them. If I succeed, it's good for all of us. Don't you see?" His eyes finally met mine, wide, searching, desperate for approval. I set the cups down gently, one in front of him, one in front of me. "And what happens if you fail?" The question cut sharper than I intended, but I didn't take it back. He swallowed hard. "I won't. Not this time. I just need a chance." The back door creaked, and before I could stand, Vanessa appeared. She must have waited outside, letting him go first. She slipped into the kitchen with a smile too practiced, resting her hand on Michael's shoulder, as if she'd been there all along. "Grandma," she cooed, her tone layered with concern that didn't reach her eyes. "We only want to take care of you. All this weight, you shouldn't carry it alone, unless—" She tilted her head, her voice sharpening just enough to cut. Unless you'd rather hold it all for yourself. Her words dripped like acid, a challenge disguised as sympathy. Michael shifted in his seat, caught between her hand and my gaze. I leaned back, spine straight, voice steady. You don't prove yourself by taking what another has guarded a lifetime. You prove yourself by building something of your own. The room stilled. Michael's jaw clenched, his knuckles whitening around the cup he hadn't touched. His eyes flickered with shame, pride, confusion all at once. He looked like a man split down the middle. "Grandma," he whispered, almost pleading, I can't keep being the one who hasn't done anything. I need to show the world I'm not just someone's grandson." I softened only enough to hold his gaze without flinching. "Then show them with your own two hands. Not mine, not your grandfather's, yours." Vanessa's hand tightened on his shoulder. Her smile was gone now, replaced with a flash of frustration. "We're trying to help you," she snapped. "Why make it sound like theft?" I turned my eyes on her, calm but unyielding. "Because when you dress hunger in silk, it's still hunger." Michael stood abruptly, chair legs scraping the floor. His chest rose and fell too fast, his eyes wet but burning. "I don't want to fight with you," he said. I thought you'd understand." "You're right," I said evenly. "I do understand. That's why I'm saying no." For a long moment, no one moved. The clock ticked on the wall, steady and unbothered. Michael finally turned, brushing past Vanessa, muttering something I couldn't catch. The screen door slammed behind him. Vanessa lingered a moment longer, her stare sharp as glass. Then she leaned in, voice low, venom laced with sweetness. "You'll regret making him feel small. You'll regret this." I lifted my spoon, stirred my tea once, and let the silver strike porcelain. The sound rang out like a bell, final, unshakable. Her smile faltered. She left without another word. The house fell silent again, except for that single chime still echoing in the air. The morning after Michael stormed out, the air in my house was heavier than the Georgia humidity. The folder still sat on the kitchen table where Travis had laid it days before. I hadn't touched it, but its presence lingered like a snake coiled, waiting. A knock at the door broke the silence, this time softer, familiar. I opened it to see Marjorie, my neighbor 2 houses down, hair cropped close, sun hat in one hand, a loaf of cornbread in the other. A widow like me, she had known storms of her own. She had also known what it meant to lose. "Sheila," she said, stepping inside without waiting. "I saw their car leave here the other day. Figured I should stop by." She set the cornbread on the counter, but her eyes went straight to the table. The folder. Her face tightened, jaw set. "Good Lord," she muttered. "Don't tell me they already brought this." I didn't answer. I just poured coffee, the smell filling the space between us. She walked to the table, flipped the cover back with one sharp motion, and scanned the first page, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Durable power of attorney," she said flatly. "One stroke of a pen, and you hand them your life. Sheila, don't even think about it. I nearly buried myself because of this." Her words cracked through me sharper than thunder. I sat down across from her, steady but listening. Marjorie leaned forward, voice low but fierce. "After Frank died, my nephew came around. Sweet words, all about keeping me safe. Said the farm would be easier to manage if he held the papers. Said I wouldn't have to worry. I signed, Sheila. I signed because I thought family meant protection." She paused, eyes burning with memory. Within 6 months, the farm was gone. Sold. My name erased from deeds. My bank account drained. By the time I realized, the lawyer told me it was legal, ironclad. He had every right. I lost everything Frank built with his hands. A lifetime, gone in ink. The kitchen went still. Even the kettle on the stove hissed softer, as if the house itself was listening. I felt my palm press against my pocket where the brass key rested. Heavy, warm, alive. Marjorie's gaze locked on me. "One signature, Sheila. That's all it takes. You'll think you're just keeping peace. But you'll lose more than houses. You'll lose yourself." I drew the key out, let the morning light hit its surface. Brass, worn smooth by years in my hand, yet solid. I closed my fist around it, firm. "My husband told me never to sign," I said quietly. "Not a thing. He said one day I'd understand. I think that day's here." Marjorie nodded once, sharp. "Then listen to him. Listen to me. Don't let them turn love into a leash." We sat in silence, the folder between us, its edges bright under the sun. Marjorie finally pushed it back toward me as though it were poison. "Burn it. Shred it. Just don't let their words soften you." Her voice carried no softness of its own, only warning, carved from scars. I slipped the key back into my pocket, its weight grounding me. My eyes met hers, steady now. "They think I'm frail. They think I'll bend. But I won't." Marjorie leaned back, arms crossed. "Good, because once you bend, there's no straightening again." I reached for my cup, lifted the spoon, and stirred once. The sound rang through the room, sharp, metallic, unyielding. Not just tea, a signal, a promise. From that moment, they would not catch me blind. Saturday morning, I drove to Whole Foods on Victory Drive. The store was busy, carts clattering against each other, voices rising over the hum of fluorescent lights. I walked through the aisles with my list, tea, bread, lemons, but my mind was elsewhere. Ever since Marjorie's warning, I had kept the brass key in my pocket like a shield. I had just stepped out into the shaded parking lot when I heard it, Travis's voice. Clear, sharp, carrying farther than he realized. He was standing 3 cars over, phone pressed to his ear, pacing near a black Lexus. His suit jacket was off, sleeves rolled, but his words cut harder than any blade. "If she signs," he said, his tone low but urgent, "we liquidate 2 of the Hilton Head villas immediately. That'll cover the parent company's debt and give Vanessa room to maneuver. If she refuses, the whole structure collapses. Do you understand? Everything goes under." I froze in the shadow of an oak tree, groceries heavy in my arms, breath caught in my throat. My chest tightened, but I forced myself still, invisible in the shade. Travis stopped, listening to whoever was on the other end. His voice rose, sharper now. "No, she hasn't signed yet. She's playing stubborn. Vanessa swears Michael will break her down. He just needs more time. But I'm telling you, without that signature, we're finished." Finished. The word cut through me like ice. I shifted slightly, my shoes crunching on a stray piece of gravel. Travis turned his head, scanning the lot. My pulse hammered, but I pressed back against the tree, hidden by the shadows. He resumed pacing. "We'll push again next week, soften her up, maybe use the health angle. Old people scare easy when you mention hospitals. But if she doesn't fold—" He paused, then spat the words like venom. "Then Vanessa and I are ruined." For a moment, the only sound was the rattle of carts and the distant bark of a child asking for candy. I clutched the bag tighter, knuckles whitening. The weight of the brass key in my pocket pressed hard against my hip, steadying me. Douglas's voice seemed to rise from memory, firm as stone. "Don't sign anything. One day, you'll understand." That day had come. Travis ended his call, his face tight with frustration. He yanked his car door open, muttering curses under his breath, and drove off fast, tires screeching across the lot. I stayed in the shade until the sound of his engine vanished down the road. Only then did I step forward, heart still pounding but spine straight. I knew the truth now. Not just suspicion, not just hints, proof. This wasn't about protecting me. It was about saving Vanessa's empire, built on sand and already crumbling. I walked slowly back to my car, set the groceries in the trunk, and leaned on the handle for a moment. The brass key was warm in my fist, as if Douglas himself had passed it to me again. I whispered into the still air, "No, I won't sign. Not now. Not ever." And for the first time, I felt not just defensive, but armed. Their desperation had spoken louder than their smiles ever could. I closed the trunk, slid into the driver's seat, and started the engine. The road home stretched wide, but inside me the walls were already rising. The fortress was holding. I knew the knock on my door would come sooner or later. It was sharper this time, impatient, the kind that demanded entry rather than requested it. I opened it slowly and found both Michael and Vanessa on my porch. Michael's eyes were downcast, shifting from the floorboards to my face. Vanessa, however, stood tall, her hand gripping his arm like a leash. "We need to talk," she said. I stepped aside, letting them enter. The kitchen, my fortress, suddenly felt smaller with their presence. The air thickened, and the brass key in my pocket pressed hard against my thigh, grounding me. Vanessa wasted no time. She laid a folder on the table. Again. Her tone was honey laced with poison. "Grandma, this is simple. A signature, and you'll never have to worry again. Michael will finally have what he deserves. Isn't that what you want?" Michael's shoulders tensed, but he stayed silent. I poured tea, slowly, deliberately, letting the silence stretch longer than comfort allowed. Finally, I set the cups down and looked at her. "If it's so simple, why does it feel like a trap?" Her smile thinned. "Because you don't trust us. But you should. We're family." I met her gaze evenly. Family doesn't show up with lawyers. Family doesn't turn love into contracts. Michael shifted uncomfortably, his hands clasped together. "Grandma," he said softly, "this isn't just about us. I need this. I can't keep failing. This is my chance to prove myself." The crack in his voice made me ache, but I did not bend. Vanessa leaned forward, her words sharp. "If you really loved him, you'd sign. Or do you want to watch him sink? Do you want him to fail while you sit here clutching houses you don't even use?" The accusation struck hard, but I didn't flinch. I steadied my voice, low but clear. Love does not mean turning the people you care about into tools. Love means teaching them to stand on their own feet. And Michael, you will never prove yourself by taking what someone else fought a lifetime to build. Michael's eyes filled with conflict. He glanced at me, then at her, caught between blood and vows, between guilt and ambition. Vanessa's tone grew colder. "So that's it? You'd rather see him struggle than help? That's not love. That's selfishness." I set my cup down with a quiet chime, the sound slicing through her words. Selfishness is demanding sacrifice without respect. I have already sacrificed 40 years beside Douglas, storms, debts, labor. What I hold now is not selfishness. It is survival. It is dignity. Michael stood abruptly, his chair scraping across the floor. His voice trembled. "I don't know who to believe anymore." The silence that followed was heavier than any storm. His eyes darted between us, lost. I looked at him, steady, unblinking. "Believe what you see, Michael. Who is asking and who is demanding? Who is building and who is taking? That will give you your answer." His lips parted, but no words came. He turned toward the door, his steps unsteady. Vanessa followed quickly, throwing one last glare over her shoulder. "This isn't over." The screen door slammed, and I stood alone again in the quiet kitchen. My hand closed around the brass key, and I whispered to myself the truth I already knew. Their desperation had crossed the threshold, but I had not. The fortress still stood. The envelope was thicker than usual, stamped with the bank's seal. I tore it open at the kitchen counter, steam from the kettle curling beside me. Inside, my eyes locked on words that stopped my breath cold. Transfer of ownership, executed by Sheila Marlowe. 2 of Douglas's Hilton Head villas, signed away. My name sprawled across the bottom in a looping script that looked close enough to pass, but not mine. I gripped the page until it crumpled. My hands shook, not from fear but from fury. They had moved from pressure to theft. The phone was in my hand before I realized it. I dialed the one man Douglas had trusted with every nail, every deed, every contract. Harold Green. "Harold," I said, my voice steel, "I need you. They've forged my signature." There was a pause on the other end, then his gravelly tone. "Tell me exactly what you have in front of you." I read the document word for word, my eyes burning with each line. He interrupted only once. "And the signature?" "Not mine," I snapped. "They copied it, but sloppily. The loop on the S is wrong. Douglas always said, 'Our names carry weight. They can't be played with.'" Harold exhaled sharply. "I'll drive down now. Don't speak to anyone. Don't call the bank. Don't shred that paper. Put it back in the envelope and lock it up. I'll be there in an hour." True to his word, Harold's old Buick pulled into my driveway before the kettle cooled. He strode into the kitchen, gray hair slicked back, leather briefcase worn but sturdy in his hand. "Show me," he demanded. I handed him the envelope. He spread the papers on the table, sliding on his glasses. He traced the signature with one finger, then looked at me over the rim. "Fake," he said flatly. "Blatant. Whoever filed this thought they could slip it past the system. They underestimated both of us." My jaw tightened. They think desperation gives them license. Harold's eyes hardened. "Desperation makes people sloppy. That's our advantage." He pulled out a yellow legal pad, scrawling notes, his pen scratching furiously. "Here's what happens. I file an injunction at the county clerk's office. That freezes the transfer before it posts. Then I notify the bank's fraud division. With forged signatures, the burden of proof is on them, not you. They'll have to explain themselves to a judge." His certainty steadied me. "What if they deny it?" I asked. "They will," Harold said. "And that's when we demand handwriting analysis. Experts, paper trails, every phone call, every email they left behind. Vanessa's arrogance is a gift. People like her always leave a trail." I sank into my chair, the brass key warm in my pocket. Douglas warned me. He said one day I'd understand why silence was armor. Harold leaned forward, voice low. "You're not silent now. You're fighting back, and with the law on your side." I thought of Michael, his pleading eyes, his torn loyalties, and Vanessa, standing tall, certain I'd fold. I closed my hand around the key. "Then file it. Today." Harold nodded once, sealing the papers back in his briefcase. "By sunset, that transfer is dead, and by tomorrow, they'll know you saw through them." For a moment, the kitchen was quiet, but alive with resolve. The forged signature had been meant to strip me of Douglas's legacy. Instead, it lit a fire. As Harold left, I touched the edge of the counter, steadying myself. I wasn't just defending walls and deeds. I was defending a lifetime. The spoon in my teacup slipped against porcelain, ringing out sharp and clear. Not by accident, but by warning. The battle had begun in earnest. The knock rattled the wood like it was a demand, not a request. I opened the door, and there they stood, Vanessa in a tailored dress, her chin high, and Travis with his briefcase clutched like a weapon. Their masks were gone. No polite smiles, no false sweetness, just raw hunger. Michael lingered a few steps behind them, shoulders tight, lips pressed together. Vanessa didn't wait for an invitation. She swept past me into the kitchen, her heels clicking against the hardwood, as if she owned the house already. Travis followed, his silence speaking more than words, while Michael hesitated at the door before stepping in. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," Vanessa snapped, turning to face me. "You're old. You don't know how to manage millions. It's selfish to hoard it. Michael deserves a future. And you—" She pointed at me as though scolding a child. "You're standing in his way." Her words sliced through the room, but I didn't flinch. I walked calmly to the counter, lifted the brass key from my pocket, and placed it squarely in the middle of the table. The metallic clink echoed louder than her voice. "You want this?" I said, my voice low but sharp. "As long as I breathe, don't dream of touching it." Vanessa's face darkened, her mouth twisting into something vicious. "So, you'd rather let your grandson struggle, fail, be crushed under the weight of missed opportunities, just so you can clutch at old papers in a safe? That's not love, Sheila. That's cruelty." Michael shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tight. "Vanessa," he murmured, but she raised her hand to silence him. I leaned forward, my eyes fixed on hers. "Cruelty is manipulating love into leverage. Cruelty is using fear to control family. Don't lecture me about love. You wouldn't recognize it if it stood in front of you. Travis finally spoke, his tone oily, rehearsed. Mrs. Marlowe, let's be rational. Sign over power of attorney, let us handle the complexities. The legacy is too vast for one person to oversee. It will wither under your watch. This is efficiency, not theft. I laughed, but it was sharp, humorless. Efficiency? Forging my signature to steal property wasn't efficiency. It was fraud. Harold Green filed the injunction yesterday. The bank knows. The county clerk knows. You've already lost. For a moment, silence suffocated the room. Travis's face paled. Vanessa's jaw clenched. Michael's head jerked up, shock flickering across his features. Vanessa stepped closer, her voice rising. So you'll destroy your own family's chance at success just to prove a point? You think holding on to these villas makes you noble? No, it makes you pathetic. You're clinging to the past while your grandson's future rots. Her venom filled the air, but I stood unmoved. Douglas built those homes brick by brick, storm by storm. They are not yours to gamble away. And Michael's future? That will be his to build, not stolen from the sweat of another man's back. Michael's eyes darted between us, his chest rising and falling rapidly. I don't want it like this, he whispered. Vanessa spun on him. Then what do you want? To fail again? To watch everything slip away while your grandmother locks the future in a dusty safe? Grow up, Michael. Opportunity doesn't wait. His voice cracked. This isn't opportunity. It's theft, and you're dragging me with you. For a second, I saw it. The boy I had raised summers at this very table, eating peach cobbler with sticky fingers, laughing when Douglas teased him about crooked baseball swings. That boy was still there, trapped under the weight of her scorn. I spoke, calm but firm. Michael, listen to yourself. Your silence tells you the truth. You know what they're asking isn't right. He looked at me, torn, eyes glistening with conflict. His lips parted, but no words came. Vanessa slammed her hand on the table, rattling the key. This isn't over. You think a lawyer will protect you? Paper can be twisted. Courts can be bought. But I promise you this. You will regret standing in our way. I lifted the key again, slipping it back into my pocket. No, Vanessa. The only regret will be yours, because you've already shown Michael who you really are. The air thickened with the weight of her fury. She grabbed Travis's arm and stormed out, her heels pounding like a drumbeat of retreat. Travis followed, face tight, briefcase clutched harder than ever. Michael stayed frozen, caught between the slammed door and my steady gaze. His voice was barely a whisper. I don't know what to do. I stepped closer, placing my hand lightly on his shoulder. Then start by choosing who you want to be, not who someone else tells you to be. He swallowed hard, his shoulders trembling. Then he pulled away, silent, and walked out after them. The door shut, leaving me in the quiet kitchen. My pulse still raced, but my resolve was steady. The battle lines were no longer hidden. They had declared war under my roof, and I was ready. The next morning, Harold Green arrived at my house carrying a thick leather portfolio. He had been Douglas's attorney for decades, the man who drew up every contract, every deed, every clause in the trust. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. He placed the portfolio on the kitchen table, opened it with a deliberate snap, and spread the documents across the wood. They tried to move 2 villas into another name, Harold said, his tone flat and hard. Here, he pointed to the copies. This is the bank's notification. And here, he tapped a signature line. This is supposed to be yours. I leaned forward. The signature looked almost identical to mine, but not quite. The loop of the S was too sharp. The cross of the T in Marlowe too low. I felt my jaw tighten. Travis, I muttered. Harold nodded once. Travis. The timing was almost poetic. As if the universe wanted the confrontation to happen immediately, I heard tires crunch in the driveway. A moment later, the door swung open without a knock. Vanessa entered first, fire in her eyes. Travis followed, pale but trying to stand tall. Michael trailed behind, his face clouded with confusion and fatigue. Harold didn't stand. He simply gathered the forged documents, held them in one hand, and raised his chin. "Perfect timing. Saves me the trip downtown." Vanessa's voice was sharp. "You've overstepped, Harold. This is a family matter. You have no place here." "This stopped being a family matter the moment your lawyer forged my client's signature," Harold shot back, his words like a gavel striking. He slapped the papers on the table so hard the sound rang through the room. "Forgery is not a family dispute. It is a felony." Travis's face drained of color. He reached for his collar, loosening it as if he couldn't breathe. I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't insult me," Harold snapped, cutting him off. "The notary confirmed you submitted these documents. The ink isn't even dry. One more stunt like this, and I will personally hand this file to the district attorney. And make no mistake, Travis, they will prosecute." The room went silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Michael looked at Travis, disbelief widening his eyes. "You forged her name? You actually—" He stopped himself, shaking his head as if the floor beneath him had shifted. Travis tried to compose himself, but sweat beaded on his forehead. His voice trembled. It was a clerical error, just an oversight. No harm done." Harold leaned forward, eyes sharp as glass. "Oversight? Attempted fraud on property worth $20 million? That's not oversight. That's desperation." Vanessa finally snapped. She slammed her hand on the table, her voice rising. "Stop making this sound worse than it is. She doesn't even use those villas. She sits here in this kitchen, clutching a key like it's sacred. Meanwhile, my husband has dreams, businesses he could run, opportunities slipping away. And she stabbed her finger toward me. She would rather watch him crawl than share what's already ours by right." Her words burned, but I held steady. "Yours by right?" I said slowly. "Douglas built every beam, every wall, every roof with his hands. He left them to me because he trusted I'd guard them from exactly this, greed disguised as care." Michael's voice broke in, low and strained. "Vanessa, you told me it was just paperwork, that we weren't taking anything from her." Vanessa whipped around. "Michael, don't be naive. Everything she has will be yours someday anyway. Why should we wait? Why let it rot under her watch?" Michael's hands balled into fists. "Rot? Those villas are our family's history. You lied to me. You lied to my face." The air crackled with tension. Harold took the opening, his voice calm but merciless. "Vanessa, Travis, consider this your only warning. One more forged signature, one more attempt to bypass the trust, and I will escalate. Civil court, criminal charges, injunctions so strong you won't be able to touch a dime without me knowing." Travis swallowed hard, eyes darting like a trapped animal. You wouldn't." "I already prepared the paperwork," Harold said. He slid a sealed envelope across the table. "Filed in draft form this morning. All it takes is my signature." For the first time since the battle began, Travis's bravado cracked completely. He wiped his forehead, muttered something about needing air, and stumbled toward the door. Vanessa stayed rooted, her chest rising and falling sharply. Her silence was louder than her rage. Her eyes burned into me, into Harold, into Michael, but she said nothing. The fury in her gaze promised this was far from over. Michael turned to her, voice shaking. "Tell me you didn't know he forged it. Tell me you didn't push this." Her lips parted, but no words came. The silence was its own confession. I watched my grandson's shoulders slump as the truth hit him. The betrayal wasn't just Travis's. It was hers, his wife. Harold began collecting his papers, sliding them neatly into his portfolio. "My advice, Sheila? Install a new lock, and keep that key close. They'll try again." I nodded once, my fingers brushing the brass key in my cardigan pocket. Its weight steadied me. Vanessa finally spoke, her voice low, venomous. "You think you've won, old woman? You've only delayed the inevitable. One way or another, that fortune will be ours." I met her gaze without blinking. "Then prepare to lose, because this war isn't about fortune. It's about dignity, and that's something you'll never take." Michael's face was pale, torn between fury and heartbreak. He opened his mouth as if to speak, then closed it again. The boy I had raised was caught in the wreckage of the woman he had chosen. Vanessa turned on her heel, her movements sharp, deliberate. She stormed out, her heels striking the floor like gunshots. Michael lingered for a moment longer, then followed, his head bowed, his silence louder than any words. When the door finally closed, Harold exhaled slowly. "She's dangerous, and he's blind. We'll need to be 3 steps ahead." I nodded, my grip tightening on the key. Douglas warned me. And now, Harold, I understand why. The battle had shifted. No longer whispers, no longer forged papers. The lines were drawn in law and blood, and I knew I would hold them. The night after Harold's warning, I found Michael waiting on my porch. No Vanessa this time, no lawyer, no pretense. Just Michael, slumped shoulders, hollow eyes, hands shoved in his pockets like a boy caught sneaking in after curfew. I opened the door but didn't speak. He followed me inside without a word. The kitchen light spilled across the table where the battles had been fought. The forged signatures, the slammed fists, the brass key glinting in defiance. He sat down hard, burying his face in his hands. For a long time, there was only silence, broken by the ticking of the wall clock. Finally, his voice came out low, cracked. "Grandma, I just wanted to prove I wasn't useless." My chest tightened, but I held steady. "Useless?" He lifted his head, eyes rimmed red. "All my life, I've been somebody's shadow. Douglas's grandson, my father's son, Vanessa's husband. Everyone looks at me like I've never done anything on my own. And maybe they're right. I thought if I could take what Grandpa built and turn it into something bigger, finally, I'd be worth something." I found I didn't flinch, didn't soften. "So you thought signing away my life's trust would make you a man?" He winced at the steel in my tone, but he didn't look away. "Vanessa made me believe it was the right thing. She told me you were clinging to the past, holding me back. She said this was love, that this was how families move forward. His voice broke. I believed her. I let his words hang, sharp and heavy. Then I leaned forward, my voice calm but cutting. "Michael, you want to stand on your own? Then stand on your own legs. Not mine, not your grandfather's, not with forged signatures and stolen deeds. Your worth doesn't come from stealing another man's sweat." His eyes filled, tears brimming but not falling yet. I thought I was fighting for us, for a future. But now I see, it was for her. Not for me. Not for you. The pain in his voice scraped against me, but I stayed firm. "Then learn the lesson now. Real love doesn't ask you to betray blood. Real strength doesn't need shortcuts." At last, the tears broke. Michael's face crumpled, his shoulders shaking. He covered his eyes with his hands, as though ashamed to let me see. "Grandma, I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice strangled. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I see now how wrong I was." For a moment, I let him cry, let the weight of his choices settle on his shoulders. It wasn't cruelty. It was necessary. He had to feel it, to know the cost of his weakness. When his sobs quieted, I placed the brass key on the table between us. Its metallic shine caught the light, a reminder of what was at stake. "Michael," I said evenly, "this is not just a key. It's a promise, a lifetime of work, a shield your grandfather left me to protect you, even from yourself. And I will not hand it over, not to Vanessa, not to Travis, not even to you, until you prove you can carry it with honor." He stared at it, his breath uneven. His hand twitched as though tempted to reach, then pulled back. "I don't deserve it," he muttered. I nodded once. "Not yet, but you can, if you choose better from here on." His tears slowed, his breathing steadied. For the first time, I saw not just the boy torn by desperation, but the man he might become if he chose differently. Still, the shame remained. He wiped his face roughly, unable to meet my eyes. "Vanessa won't stop. I don't even know who she is anymore." "She showed you who she is," I said, my tone sharp. "Believe her. His chest rose and fell, the fight leaving him in uneven gasps. He looked at me then, and in his eyes was a mix of guilt, sorrow, and the faintest flicker of resolve. "I don't want to be this man anymore," he said. "Then don't," I answered. "Choose differently. Prove it. Not to me, to yourself." For a moment longer, silence stretched between us. Michael's tears had dried, but his face carried the rawness of a wound newly opened. He stood, shoulders hunched, and reached toward the door. At the threshold, he turned back, voice hoarse. "I'm sorry, Grandma. I hope one day you can forgive me." I didn't say I forgave him. Not yet. Instead, I picked up the key and slipped it back into my pocket. Its weight reminded me. Forgiveness was easy, but trust had to be rebuilt brick by brick. Michael left quietly, the screen door shutting with a hollow thud. I stood alone in the kitchen, the battle far from over, but with one truth finally exposed. My grandson was not evil, just lost. And now he had to decide if he'd stay lost or find his way back. The clock ticked steady on the wall, but inside me a storm gathered. Vanessa would come again, and next time it would not be tears at my table, it would be fire, and I was ready. The message came late at night. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, its glow cutting through the dark. I reached for it, expecting some mundane update, but what I read sliced deeper than any forged signature. "If you refuse to sign, we'll have no choice but to petition the court. You're not capable of managing millions. We'll prove you're incompetent. Once the judge agrees, everything becomes ours anyway." Vanessa. The words burned against my eyes. She wasn't threatening anymore. She was declaring war. I sat at the edge of the bed, the brass key warm in my fist, my breath steadying itself. I could almost hear Douglas's voice, calm and unwavering. "Don't sign anything. Hold your ground." By dawn, I had forwarded every message to Harold. When he arrived that morning, he didn't bother with greetings. He spread the printed text across the table like evidence in a trial. His expression was tight, but there was fire in his voice. "She's playing the incompetence card," Harold said, his jaw set. "Classic move when they can't get what they want through signatures. They'll argue you're too old, too confused, too frail. If the court believes them, they appoint a guardian. And that guardian," he tapped the paper sharply, "could be Vanessa." I poured coffee, calm. "Then we won't let the court believe them." Harold's eyes met mine. "I'll need everything: medical records, doctor's notes, prescriptions, and witnesses, neighbors, friends, anyone who can testify you handle your own affairs without help." I nodded once. "Done." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "I'll also schedule an independent evaluation, a cognitive assessment from a state-certified physician. Once that report says you're fully competent, Vanessa's petition collapses." My lips curved in the faintest smile. She underestimates me. She always has. For the next days, my house became a command center. Harold gathered documents, photocopies, notarized statements. Marjorie came willingly, standing in my kitchen with arms crossed, vowing she'd testify. "I see you every morning in that garden," she told Harold. "You balance bills, fix your own faucets, drive yourself to the store. If they say she's incompetent, they'll have to call me a liar too." Harold scribbled her statement down, nodding firmly. The doctor's visit came next. Dr. Lang, a sharp-eyed woman younger than Michael, sat across from me with a clipboard. She asked questions, dates, names, calculations. She tested memory, problem-solving, attention. When she finished, she set the pen down and smiled. "Mrs. Marlowe, you're sharper than most 40-year-olds I see. I'll file the report by tomorrow." Harold's grin was thin, but satisfied. That will be the nail in Vanessa's coffin. That evening, I sat alone in the kitchen, the key on the table before me. Vanessa had escalated again, trying to strip me not just of property, but of dignity, declaring me unfit, as though age meant weakness, as though years of survival could be erased by her ambition. I closed my hand over the key, whispering into the stillness, "You chose the wrong battlefield, Vanessa. I don't scare easy. When Harold returned 2 days later, he carried a sealed envelope. He opened it carefully, laying the doctor's report flat. Cognitively intact, independent, no evidence of impairment. He looked at me, his eyes gleaming. This is ironclad. If Vanessa files her petition, we'll shred it in court before it breathes. I nodded, but my resolve was colder than satisfaction. Vanessa had revealed her true hand, not just greed, but contempt. She didn't just want property, she wanted to erase me. That night, my phone buzzed again. Another message from her. Think you can hide behind lawyers and old friends? We'll see what the judge thinks when we stand in front of him. I didn't respond. Instead, I slid the key back into my pocket, letting its weight press into me like armor. The battle was shifting. No longer whispers over tea or forged papers slid across my table. This would be fought in the open, under the glare of the court. And when the day came, I would stand unshaken, not just for Douglas's legacy, but for every year of my life that Vanessa thought she could erase, with a single lie. The war had entered its next stage, and I was ready. The courthouse in Savannah stood tall, its white columns cutting against the morning sky. By the time I stepped inside, every bench in the gallery was packed. Neighbors, reporters, even strangers drawn by the scent of scandal. The case had moved faster than anyone expected. Forged signatures tied to multi-million-dollar properties don't sit quietly. They demand daylight. Harold walked beside me, his portfolio under one arm, his expression grim but confident. "Stay steady," he said. "All you have to do is speak the truth. The lies will collapse on their own." I nodded once, clutching the brass key in my pocket. Its weight grounded me as I walked toward the front. At the opposite table sat Vanessa, sleek in a dark suit, her jaw tight. Beside her, Travis whispered furiously, sweat already shining at his temples. Michael sat 2 rows back, alone, his face pale. He didn't sit with her. He didn't sit with me. He just sat, caught between the wreckage of his choices. The judge entered, and the room rose. His gavel struck once, echoing sharp. Court is now in session. This hearing addresses the allegation of forged property transfers in the matter of the Marlowe estate. Harold stood first, sliding the forged documents onto the bench. "Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Sheila Marlowe, never signed these. We have the originals, the trust papers, decades of notarized documents for comparison. This signature," he tapped the line hard enough to echo, "is a forgery." Vanessa's attorney rose, fumbling through a rehearsed defense. The transfer was executed in good faith. If there was an error, it was clerical, not criminal. Mrs. Marlowe's memory— "Enough!" the judge cut him off. His eyes narrowed. "You're suggesting incompetence, correct?" The lawyer hesitated. "Yes, Your Honor. We question her capacity." Harold's voice sliced through. "Then let's hear from the doctor." Dr. Lang stepped forward, crisp in her white coat, her report in hand. She spoke clearly. "Mrs. Marlowe is fully competent. Cognitive scores above average. She manages her finances independently. There is no evidence whatsoever of impairment." The courtroom buzzed, whispers rippling through the gallery. The judge leaned forward. "So, the argument of incompetence is dismissed. Let's return to the signature." Harold called the handwriting expert. Charts were rolled out, magnified copies displayed. Every stroke compared, every detail dissected. The conclusion was swift and damning. This signature is not Mrs. Marlowe's. It was traced, manipulated, a deliberate forgery. I rose then, straightening my spine, my voice carrying steady across the silent room. "I know what I sign. And I did not sign a single page they brought into my home, not one." Every word landed like stone. The judge turned to Travis. "Mr. Dalton, these filings bear your notary seal. Explain." Travis's face blanched. His mouth opened and closed, no words forming. Sweat dripped down his temple. He stammered, I must have— There was confusion, Your Honor." "Confusion doesn't forge signatures," the judge snapped. All eyes shifted to Vanessa. She sat frozen, fury burning behind her calm mask. Her attorney leaned toward her, whispering frantically, but she didn't respond. Michael buried his face in his hands. The judge's gavel struck hard. The petition for transfer is denied. The forged documents are null and void. Further, I am referring this matter to the district attorney for investigation of fraud. This court will not tolerate such abuse. The sound of the gavel echoed like thunder. Gasps rose from the gallery. Some clapped quietly before the bailiff hushed them. Justice had landed like a hammer, and the room knew it. Travis sagged in his chair, pale as chalk. Vanessa's lips pressed so tight they drained of color. Her eyes flicked to me, blazing hatred, but she said nothing. I remained standing, my chin high. The truth had spoken for itself. As the courtroom emptied, strangers brushed my shoulder, whispering words like brave and strong. Marjorie caught my hand, squeezing it with a nod. Harold packed his files with calm satisfaction, though I saw the storm still brewing in his eyes. Michael approached me at last, his voice low, broken. "Grandma, I didn't know it would go this far. I didn't know." I looked at him, steady, but not cruel. "Now you do." He dropped his gaze, shame bending his shoulders, then drifted back into the crowd, alone. I stepped out into the Savannah sunlight, the brass key safe in my pocket. The fight wasn't over, but today justice had spoken. And for the first time since this war began, the world saw Vanessa and Travis for what they were. Liars exposed under the bright light of truth. The fortress held. The courthouse victory was still echoing through Savannah when I heard another knock at my door. This one wasn't sharp or arrogant. It was hesitant, almost fragile. I opened it to find Michael standing there, shoulders slumped, eyes swollen with sleepless nights. "Grandma," he said softly, his voice trembling, "I need to talk." I stepped aside. He entered the kitchen, the battlefield that had witnessed forged documents, cruel words, and shattered trust. But this time, there was no folder in his hands, no wife at his side, only shame. He sat down heavily, his palms flat on the table. For a long time, he stared at the wood grain as though it could give him courage. Finally, he spoke. "I let ambition blind me," he admitted, his voice raw. "I thought proving myself meant shortcuts. I thought Vanessa's way was the only way. And I let her convince me that you were the obstacle instead of the one holding everything together. I was wrong, and I'm sorry." The honesty in his tone cut deeper than Vanessa's venom ever had. I folded my hands around the brass key in my pocket, letting its weight steady me. "Michael," I said firmly, "forgiveness is easy, but trust is something you have to earn back, brick by brick. You broke it when you stood silent while they tried to take what wasn't theirs." His eyes filled, tears brimming. "I know, and I don't expect you to hand it back just because I'm saying sorry. I don't want to lose you. Not you." For a moment, I saw the boy he once was, the boy who had run barefoot in my garden, who had begged for extra peach pie at my table. The man before me was broken, but at least he was honest. I rose slowly and placed my hand on his shoulder. He trembled under my touch. "You're still my grandson. That hasn't changed. But if you want to prove you're more than Vanessa's echo, then stand on your own feet. Show me. Don't just say it." He looked up, tears spilling now. "I will. I swear it." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy with the truth between us. Love remained, but trust had been scarred. Michael wiped his face with the back of his hand, his voice breaking. "She's gone, Grandma. Vanessa packed up last night. Didn't even say goodbye. Just gone." A hollow ache flashed in his eyes, sharper than anger. "She left me with nothing but debts and shame, and I let her." I spoke quietly, each word clear. "She didn't leave you with nothing. She left you with a choice. You can drown in what she took, or you can rise in what you still have." He shook his head, tears streaming. "It hurts. God, it hurts. I thought she loved me." I squeezed his shoulder. Love doesn't ask you to betray blood. It doesn't forge signatures or demand you destroy yourself for pride. Vanessa never loved you. She loved the fight for power. And when she lost, she walked away. His sob tore through the kitchen, raw and unguarded. I pulled him into my arms, his frame shaking against mine, like the boy who once scraped his knee and cried until Douglas lifted him high. I whispered, steady, into his ear. "You're not useless. You never were. But now you have to prove it the right way." He clung tighter, then slowly pulled back, his face streaked with tears, but his eyes steadier than before. "I'll do it, Grandma. I'll build something on my own, even if it takes me years, even if I fail 100 times. I won't take the easy road again." I nodded once. "Then you'll earn back more than trust. You'll earn respect." Michael exhaled shakily, his chest heaving as if a weight had been lifted, even while the pain remained. "Thank you," he whispered, "for not giving up on me." I looked at him, my voice calm but firm. "I almost did, Michael. Don't make me stand at that edge again." He bowed his head, absorbing the weight of my words. When he finally left, the house felt quieter, but not empty. For the first time in months, I believed he might walk his own road. Alone now, without Vanessa's hand pushing him, he would either rise or fall by his own strength. Vanessa was gone from his life, leaving only wreckage and a hollow ache. But sometimes absence carves the space where truth can finally grow. I sat at the kitchen table, the brass key in my hand, and whispered to myself, "Douglas, he's still ours, broken, but not lost." The clock ticked on the wall, steady, relentless. The war had taken nearly everything, but family, even fractured, could still be mended. And as the night settled, I knew one truth above all. Vanessa had left, but the fortress still stood. The house was still. No lawyers, no shouting, no papers spread across my table. Just quiet, the kind of quiet that feels earned. I set the kettle on the stove, watching steam rise as I pulled 2 cups from the cabinet. One for me, and one for Douglas. His place still across from mine, though it's been years since he sat there. I poured the tea slowly, letting the amber swirl in the porcelain, the scent of jasmine filling the room. The screen door to the porch was half closed, creaking softly in the night breeze. I always left it that way. Those who came with respect knew to knock and wait. Those who came with greed rattled it, demanding to be let in. Tonight, no one knocked. The world outside was finally silent. I carried the cups to the table, set his across from me, and wrapped my hands around mine. The brass key lay between them, gleaming in the lamplight. It had survived their tricks, their forged papers, their shouting matches. It had survived everything. My eyes drifted to the rose garden beyond the porch. The trellis Douglas built stood strong, vines heavy with blooms even in the dark. He had always said roses were stubborn things. They thrived when cared for. But even when neglected, they fought to bloom again. I raised my cup, speaking softly into the empty space. "They tried, Douglas. They came with lies, with threats, with fire in their eyes. But I kept your word. I didn't sign. Not a page, not a line." The night air pressed against the house, carrying the faint scent of roses through the half-closed door. One signature could have stolen our life's work. But no paper, no court, no desperate voice can steal the mind of a woman who remembers her promise. I set the cup down gently, the porcelain kissing wood with a sound sharp enough to be final. The porch light glowed steady, casting a pool of warmth on the steps outside. To some, it would look like welcome. To others, warning. That door would stay half-closed for the rest of my days. I looked at the second cup across from me, the steam curling upward like a ghost of Douglas himself. "You told me once, hold the line. Tonight, I know I did." The roses swayed in the dark, and the brass key lay warm beneath my palm. Fade out, the porch light burning steady, the door half-closed, the whisper of roses in the night, a legacy intact, a promise kept.